So I didn't used to read my sermons so much. I said them, but I've come to a point in my life where I read them. So please grant me your forgiveness. It's so interesting. This week's Torah portion, which is known particularly for the revelation of Torah at Mount Sinai, and explicitly for the gift of the Ten Commandments, is named after Yitro, a Midianite priest who is Moses' father-in-law. In one parsha, we are given the ultimate truth as taught by God, and we are given wisdom about government as taught by a priest of a foreign people. In this parsha, for the first and only time, God appears to an entire people, making a covenant with them and giving the world's most famous brief code of ethics, the Ten Commandments. And in this Torah portion, Yitro teaches Moses the fundamentals of the judiciary. My question tonight is whether these two things connect. At the start of the portion, some of you will remember this from last year. I remember it from every year because it had to do with, I have trouble delegating, so this is a very memorable portion for me. At the start of the portion, Moses sits as magistrate among the people all day long. By nightfall, Yitro counsels him, "You cannot do this alone. The task of leadership is too heavy for you. What you are doing is not good." What you are doing is not good. Lo tov is only said one other time in the Torah, which is in Genesis, where it says, Lo tov, it's not good for anyone to be alone. We cannot lead alone, we cannot live alone. To be alone is not good. So Yitro says, establish a system of judges who can share the burden. Moses hears Yitro's teaching and does exactly what his father-in-law says. So specifically, this is what he proposes. You, Moses, must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to God. Teach them God's decrees and instructions and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for all people at all times. Have them bring every difficult case to you, but the simple cases they shall decide themselves. That will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. That meant that among every 1,000 Israelites, there were 131 leaders. In other words, 1 in every 8 adult male Israelites was expected to take on some leadership role. And in today's world, it wouldn't just be males, of course. Immediately following the teaching of Yitro comes the introduction to the revelation at Sinai. On the third new moon, after the Israelites went forth from Egypt, they enter the wilderness of Sinai, where God speaks the Ten Commandments. God introduces these grand words by first calling out to Moses and say this to the house of Jacob. Yes, tell the children of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you unto me. So now, if you will hearken to my voice and keep my covenant, you will be to me a special treasure from among all peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine, but you shall be to me a nation of priests and a holy people. The earth and all its inhabitants are God's, we are told, but if we live in covenant with God, then we become God's segulah, God's precious possession, or treasure. We become a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, a nation of priests and a holy people. Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Kook, the first chief rabbi of what would soon become the state of Israel, interprets these verses to mean that our people has been given a dual purpose and task. For Rav Kook, the phrase mamlechet kohanim, or nation of priests, refers to the aspiration to uplift the entire world. It's our job, taught Rav Kook, to act in a way which will help all the peoples of the world to fulfill their purposes and live out their highest selves. In his paradigm, that meant it is our job to teach the world God's ways, to care for the widow and the orphan, to show compassion for the stranger, to act justly and righteously as the Torah describes. We ourselves are to keep these mitzvot, and we are to teach them to the world at large. But we are also to be a goy kadosh, a holy people, which to Rav Kook was the flip side of the work of being a nation of priests. A goy kadosh, a holy people, as a goy kadosh, a holy people, we are meant to focus inwardly, to live out holiness in our own lives through study, ritual, and prayer. Being a holy people means tending to our own spiritual growth. So what is the connection between the instruction given by Yitro and the instruction given by God? In Rav Kook's interpretation, our community's task is both outward-facing and inward-facing. It is our job to help everyone in the world live up to their best and most righteous self, and it is also our job to care for our own souls. As a nation of priests, we are obligated to tend to the entire world, and as a holy nation, we are obligated to tend to our own selves. The Torah balances these two callings out within the same verse. If we were only to tend to our own selves, we'd be falling down on the job of caring for all creation. But if we don't tend to our own selves, we can't heal the world. This is, I think, part of what Yitro taught Moses when he urged him to find righteous people who could serve as magistrates. If Moses tried to adjudicate every single disagreement and dispute in the entire community, he would burn out. But once he appointed judges, he was able to tend to his own spiritual needs, which in turn allowed him to continue tending to the community. What is specifically Jewish in this portion is that for us, the Jewish people, there is only one ultimate sovereign, and it's not a human sovereign. It is God alone. This is where authority comes from. In this way, the portion establishes the moral limits of power. All human authority is delegated authority. As a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, we each have leadership roles to play, but we're subject to the teachings of the Torah. And Yitro, in a very practical way, teaches Moses to delegate authority. This side of heaven, there is no absolute power but God's power. This we learn from the Midianite priest Yitro, and this we learn from the introduction to the Ten Commandments.